Hi, my amazing viewer. Tell me, from where in the world are you watching today? A small hidden gem of a town or a big lively metropolis? Type it below. And don't forget to share this video with friends and family. It supports me so much. Let's get going. Our story isn't extraordinary, not really. Like so many others, we met during college. At first, it was casual. We saw each other off and on, nothing too serious. But as time passed, something shifted. I realized I didn't want to date anyone else. I wanted Margot, just her. And as fate would have it, she'd been having the same thoughts about me. From that moment forward, we were inseparable. The rest of college passed with us side by side, and 3 months after graduation, we got married. Margot never ended up using the degree she earned. Just 3 weeks into our new life as husband and wife, we found out she was pregnant. Grace came first, and within the year, Andrew followed. Margot made the choice to stay home and raise them, a decision I respected wholeheartedly. After Andrew, we had our third child, Megan. That was when Margot decided our family was complete, and she had her tubes tied to ensure it. We settled down in a house that had been in my family for generations. My parents had left it to me after their untimely deaths. A patrol car, engaged in a high-speed chase, had slammed into them head-on. The old farmhouse, perched on 800 acres, had been in my family for over 100 years. My great-grandfather built it, and each generation left its mark through renovations and updates. From the outside, the home still bore its aged, rustic charm. Inside, however, it was thoroughly modern. The property included several outbuildings, a large barn, a converted dairy barn now used for storage, and a wide equipment shed that doubled as a garage big enough for 6 cars. Thanks to the settlement from the county and the life insurance my parents had, the house and land were fully paid for. Unlike the generations before me, I never felt drawn to farming. Instead, I leased the fields to the Martins, who lived just to the south of us. The closest I ever came to a farmer's life was through our horses. At one point, we owned 5, 1 for each of us. But as the children grew older and eventually left home, we sold most of them, keeping just 2 for Margot and me to enjoy. We managed to send all 3 kids to college, and now they're each married and living far from the family land. Margot never needed to work unless she wanted to. For many years, she didn't feel the urge. But after Megan went off to college, something changed. She decided to pursue a new path. She enrolled in nursing school, completed her training, and worked for a few years. Eventually, though, she admitted that the constant exposure to illness was too heavy for her spirit. Still, over the years, I made sure she never lacked for anything. Clothes, jewelry, a new car, whatever she wanted, I provided without hesitation. From where I stood, our marriage was solid, deeply loving, passionate, and fulfilling. We were affectionate, physically and emotionally. Margot had always been beautiful to me, and I never let her forget it. I showered her with compliments, gifts, and attention. That's why what came next hit me so hard. It tore straight through the life I thought we had built together. It happened on a Tuesday morning. After breakfast, we took our coffee out to the patio, chatting casually about the day ahead. She mentioned needing to run into town for groceries, and apart from tending to the horses, her day was clear. I had nothing unusual, just another day at the office. But as I drove toward town, I reached a railroad crossing about a mile from home and came to a stop behind a stalled train. After sitting there for about 15 minutes, I got out to see what was going on. A railroad worker was examining a coupling between 2 cars, and I asked him about the delay. He told me the train had hit a cow, and they were waiting for the sheriff to arrive from across the county. Until then, they couldn't move an inch. With no end in sight, I turned the truck around and headed home. When I got back, the house was quiet. Margot's car was still parked in the drive, so I assumed she was out at the barn with the horses. The barn is about 200 yards away, so I started walking in that direction. As I approached, something out of place caught my eye. The rear end of a truck parked behind the barn. I recognized it immediately. It was Martin's, my friend Martin. And the first thing that crossed my mind was confusion. Why was he here, parked behind my barn, in the middle of a weekday morning? I moved around the equipment shed to get a better look. No mistake, it was definitely his truck. I walked up to the barn quietly. One of the stall doors was slightly ajar, so I pushed it open and slipped inside. Almost instantly, I heard voices, female voices, faint but distinct. I moved slowly, silently, until I reached a point where I could see into the main section of the barn. And there they were, Margot and Martin. The scene in front of me left no room for misinterpretation. A storm of fury erupted in me. For a brief, dangerous second, all I could think about was grabbing a rifle and ending it right then and there. My gaze shifted to a pitchfork hanging on the wall. My hand moved toward it before I caught myself. I remembered what had happened to Bill Miglio, acted on impulse and got life without parole. I wasn't going down that road. If there were going to be consequences, they'd come on my terms, not through a courtroom. Quietly, I backed out of the barn without being seen. Outside, my eyes fell on the garden hose Margot used to water the horses. I didn't think much, just acted. I grabbed the hose, stuck the nozzle into Martin's gas tank, turned on the water, and filled it until it couldn't take any more. Then I shut it off. After taking a little time to collect myself, I eventually headed back to the barn. Later on, I climbed into my truck and drove off to work. The train had already come and gone. When I got there, I explained why I hadn't arrived earlier. They just gave a knowing nod. Apparently word had gotten around about the train delay, and they figured that's what held me up. Once my shift wrapped up, I started the drive home. On the way, I passed a tow truck hauling Martin's pickup. A quiet chuckle escaped me. Just the beginning, you son of a bitch, I thought. Only the start. The rest of the ride, my head was swirling with thoughts of Margot. There was no way I was letting her walk away from what she'd done. Not a prayer. I wouldn't be able to move on until justice was served. When I pulled into the driveway, I took a deep breath and slipped on the usual calm expression, like nothing was wrong, for the benefit of the woman who'd betrayed me. Over dinner, I brought up Alyssa, Martin's wife, casually, as if it were just small talk. I asked Margot if she'd spoken with her lately. She paused. Why? What's that about? Why are you asking? Oh, nothing important, I replied, keeping my tone even. We used to have them over all the time, remember? Haven't seen them around in a while, just wondering if anything happened I should be aware of. There was a brief flicker in her eyes, subtle, but I caught it. No, she said a little too firmly. Well, that's interesting, I said, still playing it cool. I actually ran into Alyssa today. She told me Martin's truck got messed up. Someone poured water in the tank. Maybe he got caught doing something he shouldn't have. Margot's lips curled in a faint, almost involuntary smirk. I wasn't done. Rumor is, Martin's been sleeping around, and ended up with something unpleasant because of it. She went pale. Without saying another word, I got up and left the kitchen, a satisfied grin tugging at my lips. I headed back out to the barn to tinker with the old John Deere I'd been slowly restoring for years. Spent a couple quiet hours there before heading back inside. Margot was in the living room on the phone. I moved silently to a spot where I could catch what she was saying. You're sure? She whispered. God damn it, Martin. If you gave me something, then I gave it to Raymond. And once that happens, it's over. He'll know, and we're screwed. What were you thinking, bragging about this to people? A pause, then her voice again, softer. No, I don't want to stop. I just want it to be safe. Okay. Same time? Yeah, I'll see you then. I stepped into the room right as she hung up. Without hesitation, she looked up and said, That was Alyssa. Martin's truck is fixed. I invited them for a barbecue Saturday. She said she'll check with Martin. That okay with you? She asked casually. Sure, I said, and walked off to the kitchen to grab a beer. As I took a swig, my thoughts drifted back to her. Her days in this house were numbered. But before I sent her packing, I wanted to even the score. Martin wouldn't be walking away clean either. Next chapter. Later that night, Margot called out to me and asked if I felt like grabbing dinner and a few drinks. I figured, why not? Might as well enjoy the perks while they lasted. Usually when we went into town, we'd end up meeting Martin and Alyssa. But this time, Margot insisted it should just be the two of us. When we walked into Dusty's and headed for our usual booth, I spotted Martin and Alyssa already sitting there. The way Margot and Martin locked eyes told me everything I needed to know. I smiled to myself and pretended not to notice a thing. We joined them and made some idle conversation. A local band was setting up, and soon the music kicked off. Martin was drinking harder than usual. Maybe guilt had finally caught up with him. Who knows? The way he and Margot kept sneaking glances at each other didn't escape me. When Bob and Margot Hopkins dropped by, the tension loosened a bit. A slow song started playing, and Alyssa leaned in close to Martin, asking if he wanted to dance. He shook his head, claiming he wasn't in the mood. That's when Margot chimed in and suggested that I dance with Alyssa instead. So I did. I figured Margot just wanted me out of the way so she could cozy up to Martin. Sure enough, a few minutes later, I spotted them chatting in a quiet corner near the dance floor. Did they really think I was that clueless? Over the next 2 hours, Margot danced with Martin twice as much as she did with me. I didn't mind. They were playing checkers while I was playing chess. Their downfall was already in motion. They just didn't know it yet. Besides, Alyssa was easy to dance with. Eventually, Margot and Martin slipped out. I considered sticking around, maybe giving Alyssa some of the attention she clearly wasn't getting at home. About a half hour before last call, Margot said she was ready to go. I made an excuse to hit the restroom before we left. When I walked in, Martin was already there, visibly drunk and chatting with a couple of guys. I took care of what I needed to and walked out. On the drive home, I mentioned offhand that I'd overheard Martin in the bathroom, telling Maury Phillips there was a woman he was planning to sneak out with for a little parking lot rendezvous. With her husband and Alyssa nearby, he couldn't make a move. I joked that I'd run interference if he agreed to share. He just chuckled and waved it off, dismissively calling the woman a tramp. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw a flicker cross Margot's face, something distant, reflective. Maybe she was picturing what her lover might say about her when tipsy. If I was lucky, that tiny seed of suspicion had begun to grow. The next move. I met my lawyer on Wednesday. He didn't sugarcoat it. If I wanted to go forward with a divorce on grounds of cheating, I'd need more than assumptions. I'd need undeniable evidence. Our state doesn't officially assign blame in divorces, but certain judges here aren't shy about punishing adulterers when the facts are clear. Thursday morning, as I was pulling on my shirt for work, Margot casually mentioned she'd be heading to her cousin's place and might not be home until late. I assured her I remembered. I'd already arranged to switch shifts with a coworker, so I'd have the afternoon open. Rather than head to the construction site, I looped around the back of our land and parked where the tree line would keep my truck out of sight. I slipped into the barn and climbed the narrow steps above the tack room into the loft. From that perch, I had a clear view of both the barn interior and the path to the house, completely concealed. The hours dragged. Just when I started to think I'd miscalculated, right around 11, I saw her walking up the path to the barn. I'm the one who normally feeds the horses first thing, so when Margot showed up, the animals wandered to her, expecting their breakfast. She tossed some grain, cleaned a few stalls, then laid out 4 hay bales and spread a blanket across them like it was a picnic. Moments later, I heard a truck ease in behind the barn. I clicked on the camcorder and kept still. Martin stepped inside, went straight to her, and before long they were tangled together, arms and mouths moving fast. That was all the confirmation I needed. I shut off the camera, crept back down the stairs, and slipped out through the locker area. On my way out, I noticed the hose coiled beside the spigot. I gave the nozzle a little turn. Maybe it would mess with his engine. Maybe not. Either way, I liked the thought of him getting nervous. Let doubt fester, let him start checking over his shoulder. I drove into town, picked up a 6-pack, killed a few hours, then headed home like it was just another day. I made a sandwich and caught the evening news. Margot got in around 8 and said she was turning in early. Friday. On my commute Friday morning, I swung by my attorney's office and handed over the tape. We locked in Sunday morning to deliver the blow. That evening, Margot had that same twitchy energy, likely still riding the high from her secret rendezvous. I didn't press her. She clearly wanted attention, so I played along. We ate late, then lounged on the couch watching reruns. Before bed, she brought up that we were going out the next night with Martin and Alyssa. She said they'd be picking us up around 6:30. I nodded like I hadn't forgotten, and we turned in for the night. Saturday was one of my shifts. When I got back, she was already dressed and waiting. Not long after, Martin's truck rolled into the driveway with Alyssa in the passenger seat. Margot kept urging me to hurry, eager to get going. I told her to relax. I had something I wanted to show them first. Just a quick home video I'd put together earlier. We all filed into the living room. I asked Margot to hit play on the VCR. The tape was crystal clear. Her face turned pale, then blotched red with embarrassment. Martin looked like he'd been gut-punched. Alyssa stared, slack-jawed, frozen. Then suddenly, she sprang to life. "You filthy piece of garbage!" she snarled before slamming her knee into Martin's crotch. As he folded to the floor, gasping, she snapped, "You can walk home. Don't be surprised if the locks are changed." She stormed out. I grabbed Martin by the collar, yanked him to the door, and shoved him out onto the porch. Margot followed me into the hallway, her voice low. "We need to talk." "Fine," I said, "living room." She perched rigidly on the couch while I settled into the armchair opposite her. I got straight to it. "I'm filing for divorce. You cheated. You need to be out of this house by Monday. I'm staying." Her voice trembled. "You're really divorcing me?" Without hesitation. "Are you honestly going to say you don't love me?" "I won't lie, I do love you." "Then why are you doing this?" "Because I can't stay married to someone who did what you did, especially not with him." She stood slowly, as if the weight had just hit her. "I love you too," she said, "and you're not getting rid of me that easily. Only an idiot walks away from something like this." She turned and started walking down the hallway. Over her shoulder, she added, "I'll be waiting for you in the bedroom." She was going to be waiting a while. I spent the night on the living room couch, already working out how to get her possessions out of the house. The moment her stuff was gone, so was she, even if I had to drag it all out myself. As I drifted into sleep, my thoughts slipped to Amber, and I began calculating how much time had to pass before it was acceptable to move on. By morning, I was in the kitchen making coffee when Margot walked in. "You didn't sleep in our bed," she said, eyeing me. "You're actually going through with this? Over a little fun?" "I am. And you're not thinking straight." "This state doesn't assign blame," she said coldly. "You know that. I get 50%. There's not much left to split, Margot. The college funds emptied the savings. You'll walk away with your car, your clothes, half the stuff in the house, and the horse. And let's not forget, no judge around here has ever awarded alimony to an unfaithful spouse. You'll still be forced to sell the farm and divide it." "You're forgetting the agreement you signed," I said. "The same one you ignored along with your vows. That prenup shields the farm completely." I nodded toward the window as a vehicle rolled into the driveway. "You'd better start figuring out where you're going to stay next, because after this guy finishes talking to you—" "You bastard," she hissed. "You think you've won? I'll hire a lawyer. That prenup won't hold." "Feel free to burn through whatever money you don't have on legal bills," I said. "It won't change anything." "We'll see about that," she snapped. The doorbell rang. I opened the door to find Bill Newbert, who greeted me with a courteous nod before walking right past me. He approached Margot, handed her an envelope, and said, "Margot, you've been served." Without waiting for a reply, he turned around and left. "Want a hand packing the car?" I asked. "Go to hell, Raymond. This isn't over." "No, it isn't," I said, "but I'll take that as a no." I stepped aside as she pushed past me and stormed out the door. I watched from the window as she loaded the last of her things into the car. Once she got behind the wheel, she gave me the finger before tearing out of the driveway. Less than 60 minutes later, Alyssa, Martin's wife, knocked on the door. She asked if I could make her a copy of the video showing Martin and Margot in the barn. I was willing to give him the benefit of the doubt, she said, but she just called him, and now he's off to meet her. I'm done. Come in, I said. Coffee's fresh. I'll get that copy made. She took a seat at the kitchen table while I poured her a mug and disappeared into the den, where I used the dual-deck VCR setup to duplicate the tape. When I returned and handed her the copy, she asked what I planned to do next. It's already done, I said. Had her served and kicked out before you got here. Not even a shot at patching things up? Not even close. After Alyssa left, I refilled my coffee and faced the hard next step, breaking the news to the kids. I didn't want them hearing it from Margot, who would twist the story and paint me as the villain. I got through to Grace and Megan directly, but Andrew didn't pick up. Had to leave him a voicemail. Then I called Ryan over at Acadia Locks to arrange for all the locks on the house to be changed. I didn't trust Margot not to come back and help herself while I was gone. The day before, knowing exactly when the papers would be delivered, I had already taken care of the finances, closed accounts, canceled cards. I wasn't completely heartless, though. I left $1,000 in our joint account. It'd get her through the week, but not much more. I boxed up all her remaining things, everything from clothes to keepsakes, and moved it all to the barn. Just as I was wrapping up, Andrew called me back. He took it better than the girls. They couldn't understand why I wasn't fighting to save the marriage. But Andrew had been burned before, and he got it. After we hung up, I strolled through the kitchen and scribbled down a grocery list. From here on out, I'd be cooking solo, and I didn't eat like Margot did. There was nothing in the pantry that appealed to me, so I headed into town to stock up. When I got back, Martin's truck was in the driveway, and there was Margot at the front door, jiggling the handle. I climbed out of my truck and walked up the path. "What are you doing here, Margot? You don't live here anymore." "I came to get the rest of my stuff, but the door's locked." "I had the locks changed. I wasn't going to risk you letting yourself back in." "Your stuff's boxed up and tossed in the barn. Bags, tools, gear, everything. Don't forget to move your horse either. If she's still here after this week, I'm slapping you with boarding fees. Here's my advice. Climb into that rusty excuse for a truck, drive to the barn, load up, and don't show your face here again. And Margot, tell her to steer clear." I wandered over to Martin's truck. The second he noticed me, he cracked the window just enough and clicked the door locks. That made me grin. I leaned in, let my voice cut through the glass. "Keep that heap off my land. Might help you hang on to the last of your dignity. And if you ever feel the need to drag Margot over here again, stick to the driveway. Hose doesn't reach that far." I shot him a grin as wide as Texas. He didn't get it right away, but when he did, the look on his face was worth $1,000. I laughed loud and long. To be fair, the guy really thought he was slick. Funny part was, every time he came out here to see her, that truck of his ran like a dream. They'd have their little rendezvous, and like clockwork, the moment he left, boom, engine trouble. He'd get it fixed, head back to her place smooth as butter, rinse and repeat. And sure enough, it'd stall again the minute he was done with his visit. Next morning, I stepped into the office and told Amber I needed to update some files. Took Margot off my health plan and reassigned the life insurance, put the kids down instead. Amber raised an eyebrow, clearly curious. I told her I was divorcing Margot. "All finalized already?" she asked. "Sealed and signed," I said. "Now all I need's a partner for the Friday night dance at the VFW. She gave me a look. "You're actually treating that like a job?" "Sure am," I replied, "and I plan to do it well enough that you'll want to bring me back." She laughed and said she couldn't wait. I left her office feeling like I'd shed 100 pounds, spent the rest of my lunch break stirring up a little trouble. The night before, I'd burned copies of a certain video, one starring Margot and Martin, caught in all their glory, and I made the rounds through town, gas station restrooms, diner bathrooms, even both sets of stalls at Walmart. I taped up a photo on each stall door. Margot and Martin tangled together, nothing left to the imagination. Over each image I scrawled, "Looking for a good time? Call Margot at her number. Underneath that, can't get through? Martin's taking appointments at his number. Feeling downright victorious, I headed back to the office. I'd barely sunk into my chair when the phone rang. Margot's name lit up. "You goddamn bastard, Raymond! What the hell is wrong with you?" she screamed. "So I had some fun after 24 years, so what?" "It didn't mean a damn thing. It was just a little fun, that's all. Didn't cost you a thing. You got everything. Hell, more than everything. Martin just got the physical part. You had the love." She paused, then sobbed out, "How could you do something that awful to me?" "I thought you loved me." "I did, once, a long time ago," I said. "Enjoy whatever's next." I ended the call. Still smiling like a kid with a secret, I looked up as Amber stepped into the office. "That grin for me?" she joked. "Absolutely," I said. "Just thinking about Friday night." We chatted a bit. Then she handed over some forms for me to sign. After that, it was back to the grind. When the day wound down, I dropped by the local bar for a couple of cold ones before heading home to cook dinner. I was halfway through my second beer when the moment I'd been waiting for walked through the door. Martin spotted me and stormed over. "You son of a bitch," he growled and swung. I didn't duck, took the hit straight on, shook it off, and gave him a beating he wouldn't soon forget. Phil, the bartender and owner, ran over. "Raymond! What in God's name? You two have been tight for decades." I looked down at Martin, curled up and groaning on the floor. He was screwing my wife. Now he's pissed that I told his wife, and handed her the evidence. Phil's eyebrows hit the ceiling. "Can you believe it?" I said. "He cheats with my wife, then comes at me like I'm the villain. You saw it. He threw the first punch. I just finished the conversation." "I saw it," Phil nodded. "To be honest," I said, "he just had lousy timing. I was still mad as hell about everything. That probably gave me a little extra motivation." Phil looked at me sideways. "So it's true? Him and Margot? You check your restrooms lately?" I asked. "Nope," he said. "I use the private one in back. Haven't looked at the public ones today." "Do yourself a favor, take a peek." I dropped a 10 on the bar and headed out. Martin was still wheezing on the floor when I walked past him and pushed open the door. He wouldn't be much good to Margot for a while, not after the solid kicks I landed below the belt. And yeah, I was still grinning the whole drive home. Not long after our run-in, Martin ended up in the ICU at County General. I later learned he blamed Margot for the loss of one of his testicles. Alyssa threw him out immediately. She used the recording I had given her as evidence to file for divorce on the grounds of cheating. I won't lie. I felt a flicker of satisfaction. New chapter. I had an unforgettable evening with Amber at the VFW dance. As we drove back to her place, she turned to me and said, "You know, the only reason I didn't pursue you before was because you were married." That caught me off guard. I honestly hadn't realized it. Then she added, "There were times I'd see you and wish you were mine." She paused, then asked, "So tell me the truth. Is this split with Margot for real? Or are you just blowing off steam and planning to patch things up later?" "It's done," I told her. "That door is shut. No going back." She smiled. "In that case, how about dinner at my place tomorrow night? I'll take care of the meal and dessert. I'll even bring wine." New chapter. In small towns, gossip doesn't walk, it sprints. By mid-afternoon Saturday, Margot was on the phone. "Didn't take long to find my replacement, did it?" she snapped. "Nobody's replaced you, Margot," I said calmly. "I heard you were out with that tramp Amber last night." I couldn't help but laugh. "You calling someone else a tramp? That's the joke of the year." "I'm not a tramp," she protested. "Kind of hard to argue that after what I walked in on, you and Martin in the barn." "That was just one time," she said, almost begging. "It didn't mean anything. I just wanted to see what it'd be like with someone else." "You're a terrible liar, Margot. I caught you twice myself, and I overheard enough from your little barn rendezvous to know it wasn't just a one-time thing. So why'd you even pick up?" I asked. "What do you want?" "I want this divorce nonsense to stop. I want you back." "Not gonna happen," I replied. "Oh, because you're having a fling with Amber now?" "I haven't even started anything with Amber yet. I'm not giving you any ammo for a countersuit. But make no mistake, Margot. Once this divorce is final, I'm going after her. You'll never get that far, Raymond. I'll fight you every inch of the way. Good luck with that, I said and hung up. That night with Amber had been incredible. Her goodnight kiss left me grinning like a fool and tingling right down to my toes. I was ready to pursue something real with her, but I meant what I said. I wasn't going to risk my case. I was keeping things clean until the papers were signed. 2 weeks slipped by, and a lot unfolded. Amber and I went on a few more dates. I got 4 angry phone calls from Margot, plus another to inform me she'd finally found a lawyer willing to represent her. Does he know you can't pay him? I asked. He says the court will likely make you cover my fees, or I can pay him when I get some money. If that's his game plan, he's not much of an attorney. You don't have any assets. You can't even make rent, let alone fund a legal battle. You're wrong, Raymond. The farm is paid off, and at $1,600 an acre, it's worth more than $1 million. I'm entitled to half. In your dreams, Margot, you're forgetting the prenup. My lawyer says he can get that tossed out. Did he get his license out of a cereal box? You've got no shot. I ended the call. 2 weeks later, both our attorneys sat down. That's when the hammer dropped on Margot. She discovered the farm wasn't in my name at all. It was legally owned by our children. After the maze of paperwork I had to go through to secure the farm after my parents passed, I wasn't about to let that burden fall on my kids, so I transferred ownership into an LLC. The business had 4 officers, me and the 3 kids, and they held all the shares. Once my youngest turned 15, I brought them all in and laid it out clearly: the history, the decisions, and why Margot had been left out. They understood and promised to keep it quiet. My thinking went back generations. Ever since my great-grandfather started the farm, it was passed down the line, from him to my grandfather, then to my father, and finally to me. If I had died with Margot as my legal heir, she would have inherited it, still young enough to remarry, and the farm might have been lost to the family forever. I couldn't let that happen. Excluding Margot wasn't out of anger. It was about safeguarding our heritage. I made the tough call to protect what had been built for generations. Maybe she could have grasped it, or maybe not. But I wasn't about to gamble on that, especially knowing her side of the family was already likely to grow distant over it. In the meantime, we finalized a few more legal documents, one of which locked in that no shareholder could sell or gift shares outside the family, and every will had to clearly state that ownership must stay within the bloodline. Honestly, I had no real confidence that any of these measures would stick once I was gone, but by then, it wouldn't be my concern. What mattered most that day in my lawyer's office was this: Margot and her legal team finally understood that they were no longer part of the future. She fainted when she got the news. When she came to, my lawyer calmly delivered the rest, much to the chagrin of her attorney, whom she fondly referred to as the Shark. Because most of my assets were in liquid form, I managed to push the process forward at full speed. Our first hearing landed on the docket for the following Tuesday, presided over by Judge Heineman. Any seasoned divorce lawyer would know that Heineman had a firm reputation, merciless in cases involving adultery. If the man cheated, he'd hand down the harshest penalties possible, even in a no-fault jurisdiction. But if it was the woman who strayed, she could expect only the minimum, especially if children were involved. In those instances, he'd often rule in favor of the father and exploit every loophole to relieve him of financial obligations. I was fairly certain Margot's attorney saw the writing on the wall. Barring some kind of miracle, he wasn't walking away with anything. After leaving the firm, I returned to the office and asked Amber if she wanted to celebrate that evening. She smiled and said yes without hesitation. The next 9 days flew by. Margot reached out 4 times, more like begged, urging me to call off the divorce and try to repair things. On the 4th call, I finally asked her to give me one solid reason why I should. "Because I love you, Raymond," she said. "It was just one affair." She swore it had no meaning, claimed it was simple curiosity. After 24 years with only me, She'd wondered what it would feel like to be with someone new. That's all it was, a brief detour. She said it was already unraveling before I found out. Apparently, the guy had started becoming clingy and controlling, and she'd intended to end things. "Raymond, I love you," she wept. "I've always loved you. I've spent 24 years proving that." She said she knew I loved her once, that love like that doesn't just vanish in a day. "Don't throw away nearly a quarter century over a single mistake," she said. "Go have your own fling. You once told me you were tempted by Amber, so do it. Or call Alyssa. Maybe she wants revenge on Martin." She insisted we were good together and begged me not to let it slip away. "This could have been fixed, Raymond, if you'd just told me about how you were feeling before anything happened with Martin. But you didn't, did you?" For her, it may have been a meaningless lapse, but to me, it felt like full-blown betrayal, a knife in the back, and with someone I once considered a friend. I told her I didn't see a path forward. I said I was sorry, but I didn't believe there was anything left to fix. "Take care of yourself, Margot," I said before ending the call. As I lowered the phone, I questioned myself. Had I made the right decision? We'd shared nearly 25 good years, until the day I walked into that barn and saw it all for myself. There was still a part of me that felt the pull. Margot had a public image, respected, admired. Amber, by contrast, was still an unknown. I couldn't fully explain why a gorgeous 24-year-old would be drawn to a man like me, pushing 45. Sure, I found her attractive. But was there anything real between us? I couldn't say yet. But I was ready to find out. To explore that possibility, I needed to be free. Officially. Maybe it sounds old school, but I'd taken those vows seriously, and I'd done my best to honor them. Still, her words lingered in my mind. Would Alyssa actually be interested in settling the score? Then there was Martha Rich, widowed for a little over 2 years now, since Henry died of cancer. Maybe she was open to the idea of dating again. When the hearing day finally arrived, everything moved forward without complication. We settled on an even division of everything, with one exception. The farm remained mine. No alimony was awarded. The judge noted that Margot held an active nursing license and pointed out that both County General and Centura Hospital were looking to hire. Centura was about 30 miles out in Overton, but he didn't consider that excessive. Her attorney requested that the judge mandate counseling. The judge asked how I felt about it. I told him it would be pointless, a waste of time and money. She had cheated. Therapy might help her understand why, sure, but it wouldn't undo the damage, and it wouldn't restore my trust. Worse than that, weekly sessions would just reopen the wound I was trying to heal from. "I understand," the judge replied, then brought the gavel down, ending the session. 6 months later, our divorce was officially finalized. As I stepped out of the courthouse, I caught a glimpse of Margot crying. For a brief moment, I felt the urge to walk over, to hold her, to tell her it would all be okay. But I didn't. I managed to keep myself from giving in. It felt like I had closed a chapter. When the judge's gavel struck, it was oddly liberating, like something had been cut loose. In my mind, at least, I was no longer bound by the vows I had once made. That same evening, I reached out to Amber, wondering if she'd be up for marking the occasion. She agreed enthusiastically. We had a nice night out, and afterward, I dropped her off at home. But the mood changed when I tried to steer things in a more intimate direction. She stopped me cold. "Let's not kid ourselves, Raymond," she said. "Yeah, you're legally separated, but until the ink's dry on the divorce papers, you're still married. I like you, but I won't be the other woman." That stung, and forced me to reflect on where I really stood. A few days later, I was picking up a few things at Safeway when I ran into Alyssa. She brought up the court date, said she'd heard about it, and asked how I was holding up. Truthfully, I felt alone. It wasn't a familiar feeling for me, but lately it had settled in like an unwanted guest. 17 years of being part of a unit, and now I was just me. "Got anything going on tonight?" she asked, besides zoning out in front of a rerun marathon. I admitted I didn't. "Want to grab a bite? The Roadhouse? Maybe a drink and some dancing at the barnyard after?" "Sure," I said. "What time should I swing by?" "Let's say 6:30? "Sounds good. I'll be ready." Dinner was light, casual. We avoided talking directly about Martin or Margot Beth, though their absence was felt in every pause. Alyssa caught me up on her life. Her job as a financial controller was intense. Early mornings, late nights, collapsing into bed just to do it all again. After we ate, we headed to the barnyard, had a few drinks, and hit the dance floor. With the help of a few cocktails, Alyssa started to open up. She told me everything. After kicking Martin out and starting divorce proceedings, she gave dating a try. A lot of it. But most of the men she met wanted more than just someone to have dinner with. They assumed I was broken, starving for affection, she said, like I was desperate to replace what I'd lost. Eventually, the bad experiences piled up, and she pulled the plug on dating altogether. "Mind if I ask you something?" I said. "Why'd you say yes to going out with me?" "Only if you promise not to laugh." Scout's honor. "Honestly? Same reason those guys came after me. You were married. I figured you'd be craving certain things." Strangely enough, she wasn't wrong. I had missed those things. I did need them. But I didn't want to be seen as someone just chasing a quick fix. That, and she admitted part of her motivation had been spite, payback for Martin. "You're devious," I joked. "You could have skipped the dinner," I added. "Met me at the door and said, 'Great, let's just get to it.'" She laughed. Funny thing is, I wasn't feeling it either, not right away, but I had another drink, danced a little more, and figured, why not see where the night goes? On the way to the car, I asked, "Your place or mine?" "Mine," she said. As we pulled into her driveway, I asked, "You sure? There's no chance you and Martin might patch things up?" "Zero," she replied. "Margot Beth wasn't the first, just the one I can't forgive." "What made her different?" I asked. "What crossed the line?" "The others, I just knew about. With her, I saw it. There were pictures, audio. It became something real." I hesitated. "What about me and Margot Beth?" I asked. "Think there's still a shot?" She glanced over. "Never say never," I said with a shrug, "but the odds aren't great." "Not great, but not zero," she pressed. I didn't respond. "Doesn't matter," she said. "Come on, let's go inside." The next morning, she asked me to call in sick and spend the day with her. I told her I couldn't. Too much to do, contracts waiting, reports stacked up, no way I could blow off work. I got the feeling Alyssa was starting to think beyond just one night, and maybe, under different circumstances, I would have been open to that. But right then, Amber was still in my head. I wasn't ready to go deeper with Alyssa. That said, I didn't mind the idea of keeping things casual with her until the 6-month waiting period ended. I just needed to strike a balance, show up enough to maintain the connection, but not so often that it looked like we were becoming a thing. So when she asked if I'd be stopping by that evening, I told her I had other plans and left it vague. I've always liked to think of myself as honest, someone who says what he means. So why start playing it cagey now? That wasn't me. I needed to lay it all out for Alyssa and let the chips fall where they would. What's that old saying? Something like, "Never let your head swell so much you can't still fit a hat on it." Alyssa made breakfast that morning. As we sat at the table eating scrambled eggs and bacon, she glanced over and said, "I'm not looking to get serious right now. You're a genuinely good guy, no doubt. Maybe sometime in the future things could shift between us. But today I'm just not in that place. I still want to keep seeing you, just not under any labels." She paused before adding, "At least for now I'd rather keep things open. More of a friends with benefits situation. Maybe once a week or so if you're good with that." There wasn't much to say except, I understand. Honestly, I feel the same. The reality was, I hadn't made a clean break from Margot yet. Our divorce wouldn't be finalized for another 6 months. Even so, I wasn't ready to stop spending time with Alyssa, especially outside the bedroom. "How about dinner next Friday? Maybe a drink, maybe dancing?" I offered. She smiled. "I'd love that." Word travels fast in a small town. Around mid-afternoon, as I folded a pile of laundry, my phone buzzed. Margot was on the other end. "So you took my advice and gave Alyssa a taste of her own medicine, huh? Now that we're even, can I come back home?" "No, Margot," I said, keeping my voice steady. "You can't, we're getting divorced." "You're being irrational, Raymond. We still love each other. Deep down, you know it. Ending this now is just insane. We're supposed to be together." "I'm sorry," I told her, "but I need this to be over." "You need it? For what?" "I mean, I said I'd sleep with Amber, and let's not forget, you were the one who gave me the green light. So what's changed?" "She won't be with a married man," I explained. "If I want a real shot with her, I have to be single. That's it." I hung up and went back to folding. Once the house was squared away, I decided to head into town and grab something to eat at Bernie's Diner. Had a solid meal, downed a beer, and headed out to the truck. That's when I saw Martin sitting in the bed of it. Alyssa must have wasted no time telling him I'd spent the night, his ex-wife's night, and he wasn't flying solo. Jimmy Farrell was with him. We had a long, ugly history, never got along since grade school. We'd thrown fists a few times in high school. We were about even in terms of wins and losses. I figured Martin brought him along thinking it'd give him the edge. But I knew Martin's playbook. He'd want to run his mouth before throwing a punch. I wasn't going to wait for that. I walked right toward them. Martin was perched on the edge of the bed, looking smug. Jimmy stood nearby with a cocky grin, clearly expecting an easy 2-on-1. As I got within earshot, I didn't say a word. I dropped my head and barreled straight into Farrell. They didn't see it coming. My forehead connected hard with Jimmy's nose, probably broke it. As he clutched his face in reflex, I drove my knee into his stomach. He hit the ground, groaning. I turned on Martin, who was scrambling off the tailgate, barely balanced. I caught him before he could steady himself and started beating him down. Between punches, I made sure to land a few kicks on Jimmy to keep him down. Leaning over Martin, I said through gritted teeth, "I'm not playing anymore. I've got a concealed carry license, and next time you come looking for trouble, I won't be using my fists. I'll put a bullet in you." I slammed his head against the pavement to make my point, gave Farrell a solid kick to the ribs for good measure, and climbed into my truck to drive home. The next 6 months crawled by. Margot kept reaching out, 2, sometimes 3 times a week, hoping I'd change my mind and let her move back in. I never budged. I went on dates with Amber a few times a week and kept up my weekly arrangement with Alyssa. In a town like ours, it didn't take long for Amber to catch wind of what was going on with Alyssa. One night at a dance at the VFW hall, she brought it up. I didn't try to spin it. "I like steady company," I told her plainly. "You made it clear that nothing's happening between us until the divorce is final. Alyssa isn't after a relationship either. We're just helping each other out. No expectations, no commitments. It works for now." Amber didn't respond right away. But when I walked her to the door later, the usual goodnight kiss was missing. There was a shift in the air. I felt it. And come Monday at work, she kept her distance. The silence between us said everything I needed to know. To be honest, it didn't sting like I thought it would. The more time I spent with Amber, the more I realized we were probably never meant to go the distance. I genuinely hoped for something real with Amber. Her blazing red hair and electric spirit made being around her a thrill, but I could never ignore the elephant in the room, our age difference. I often found myself puzzled by her interest in someone old enough to be her father. I wasn't under any illusions. I looked fine for my age and tried to stay in shape. But there was nothing particularly special about me. Amber, on the other hand, had no shortage of suitors her own age, most of whom would have leapt at a chance with her. We were from entirely different worlds. Our preferences couldn't have clashed more, whether it was music, television, literature, or even food. She lived for Asian dishes, which I couldn't bring myself to enjoy. Her music library was full of gritty rock and a bit of rap. I, meanwhile, leaned into old-school country, bluegrass, and a touch of jazz. Sundays, she was out on the golf course without fail, completely engrossed. I thought golf was a pointless way to spend a morning. She felt the same about my love for bowling. She never missed a chance to poke fun at it. Truth be told, we didn't have a single interest in common. That Tuesday, she was still distant, not that it changed much. Her book club met every Tuesday evening at the library anyway. Alyssa had gone to Overton to see her family, leaving me with a rare evening to myself. I wound up at the drop-in, knocking back a couple beers after work. Around my second bottle, the realization crept in. I was stuck on repeat. Alyssa brought laughter and an easygoing vibe. Amber filled up the empty hours while I waited for the ink on my divorce to dry. Between them both, I was scraping together about 80% of what one woman used to give me. Granted, she betrayed me, but she'd also been a damn good partner once, and that ghost still lingered. The honest truth? I still missed her. I missed everything we built together, and if I was being fully transparent, I still loved her. She was right when she said love doesn't just vanish with the flick of a switch. Emotionally, I was barely keeping my head above water, a complete wreck, a pathetic, painful mess. By Wednesday, Amber was pulling away even more, and it was clear something had to give. I couldn't dictate how she felt about me getting companionship elsewhere, but I had control over how I responded. So I did the only thing that seemed rational. I pulled back. If she didn't want me around, I'd give her the space she clearly needed. And with that, I shifted my focus. First order of business? I called Martha Rich. After her husband Henry died of cancer, she'd reached out to me about his old firearms collection, asking if I knew anyone who might be interested. I'd rattled off a few names and moved on. Martha had been a real beauty back in our school days. We'd dated for a while. That is, until Henry transferred in and swept her off her feet. Now that he'd been gone a while, I figured maybe she was open to reconnecting. The guns gave me a reason to reach out. Turned out she still had a few pieces left, and we arranged for me to stop by after work. When she answered the door, she was dressed to impress, fresh makeup, heels clicking on the floor, a promising sign. She walked me through what was left of Henry's collection. I was surprised she'd held on to the Colt 1911. I asked what she was asking for it. She'd done her research and knew the gun's worth, but she still quoted me about 25% under market value. I said I'd take it, on one condition. She had to let me take her to dinner sometime that week. She smiled and said, "Name the night, Raymond." I'm wide open. We picked Friday, 6:30. Dinner at the Mexican place and maybe some dancing at Bar Court. I left her porch grinning like a teenager. Thursday came and went without incident. Amber had taken the day off, which spared me any awkward encounters at the office. By the end of the workday, I wasn't in the mood to cook, so I swung by Bernie's diner for something easy. Soon as I stepped in, the first thing I saw was Margot Beth, waiting tables. That threw me. I was under the impression she was still bartending at Bud's. Knowing how Bernie's assigned sections, I made sure to sit somewhere out of her area. I could have just left, sure, but what would have been the point? This town isn't big. We were bound to bump into each other now and then. Might as well get used to it. No sooner had I sat down than Velma came out from the kitchen, spotted me, and walked over with a grin. I motioned toward Margot Beth and asked, "When did she start here?" "This is her third shift," Velma said. "That gonna keep you from coming in?" "Not unless I have to sit in her section," I told her. "But if I ever bring a date here, you better believe I won't stick around." She paused a beat before saying, "I know it's none of my business, Raymond, but is there any chance you two could patch things up? You used to be great together." We'd had our share of memorable moments together. That's exactly what made the breakup hurt more than it should have. But it was final. There was no undoing it. She walked over, jotted down my meal request, slid a cold beer in front of me, then turned and headed back to the kitchen without a word. I leafed through the sports section of the Times while keeping half an eye on Margot, expecting she might try to talk. She didn't. Aside from the occasional glance when she wasn't rushing around, she left me alone. When the food came, I finished it in a hurry, chased it with another beer, then tossed a 20 onto the table to cover the bill and tip. I headed outside to the parking lot. The moment echoed another, someone waiting by the back steps again. Only this time, it wasn't Martin. It was Margot. She stood when she saw me approaching. "I'm done leaving voicemails," she said. "I figured maybe if we talked in person I could help you understand. We're still in love, Raymond. Let me come home." "You're not getting it," I replied. "The divorce is almost wrapped up. That's not a pause. It's the end of the road. If I didn't want it to be over, I wouldn't have filed. You need to move on." "It's over. It's over. It's over. It's over. It's over. Don't stand there telling me you love me. It didn't stop you from letting Martin touch you." "Yeah, I still love you. A part of me always will. But the sight of you two on those hay bales, it's etched into my brain. I can't unsee it. Every time I hear your voice or catch a glimpse of you, it's like I'm right back there. If I ever want peace from that memory, I need distance. If you care about me at all, really care, then let me go. Let me get clear of it so it can fade away." I climbed into my truck and drove home. That chapter was closed. A new one was just beginning. The next day, around noon, Amber dropped by the office. "What time are you picking me up tonight?" she asked. "For what?" I said. "What's happening tonight?" "The VFW dance," she reminded me. "We go every year." "Not this time." Her face froze. "Wait, what? We're skipping it?" "You've been ghosting me all week," I said. "No replies to my texts, barely saying a word when we run into each other. I figured you were giving me the brush off, so I made other arrangements." She stared at me for a moment, then turned on her heel and left without saying a word. That night, I went out with Martha instead. The evening went well. We talked, laughed, had a nice time. I walked her home and kissed her gently on the cheek at her door. "Would you like to do this again sometime?" I asked. She smiled. "I'd love to." I was in high spirits during the drive back, but as I pulled up to the house, I noticed a vehicle parked off to the side, maybe 600 feet away. As I got closer, I recognized Amber's car. She was waiting by my truck before I even stepped out. Before I could say a thing, she launched right in. "Yeah, fine. I've been dodging you. It was childish, I admit it. I was hurt. You're supposed to be with me, and there you were, out enjoying yourself with someone else. What did you expect me to feel? I know. It's my own fault. I said I'd wait until the divorce was final, but seeing you move on so fast, that cut deep." Then she asked, "Did your date leave anything behind for me?" I blinked. "What? Is there anything left in the tank, or did she use it all up?" she pressed. Then, reading the look on my face, she shook her head. "Forget it. I'll find out for myself." She took my hand and tugged me toward the house. "By the time this weekend's over," she said, "you won't be thinking about any other woman. You're mine now, Raymond. Better get used to it." She wasn't lying. After that weekend, I didn't think about anyone else again. Not long after, Amber and I made things official. The day after the divorce papers were signed, she moved in with me. I had some concerns, mainly about the age difference, but I'd been wrong before. 5 months later, I slipped a ring on her finger. When I called Andrew, Megan, and Grace to share the news, they all said they were coming to the wedding. "It's just a simple courthouse ceremony," I told them. "Still need witnesses," they said. "Let us be there." I was hesitant. Amber was only a few years older than my kids. I didn't know how they'd react to a stepmother that close in age, but once again, I misjudged them. Grace and Megan arrived 3 days before the ceremony. Grace, ever the organizer, put together a bachelorette outing for herself, Megan, and Amber. When they got back, they acted like lifelong friends. They honestly could have passed for sisters. Andrew flew in the day before the wedding. After meeting Amber, he pulled me aside. "I'm mad at you, Dad," he said. "She's exactly the kind of woman I've been hoping to find. You should have stepped aside and given me a chance." "Don't be absurd, Andrew," I replied. "She's older than you by 4 years. But really, what does that matter anymore? These days, it's not at all rare to see younger men dating older women. If anything, it almost feels like you should be the one feeling sheepish. She's not far off in age from my own sisters. To cut to the chase, my kids gave us their full support. Just 6 months after my divorce was finalized, I found myself standing at the altar again. Within a year, Amber and I were welcoming a new baby boy, Alan Franklin, my 4th child. When he eventually walks the stage for graduation, I'll be well into my 60s. But truly, that doesn't bother me. They say having children around keeps you feeling young, and I can see why. Epilogue. Margot Beth went back to her old role at County General, picking up her nursing career where she left off. Not long after, she started dating one of the doctors there. That relationship ended in marriage, but it fizzled out almost as quickly as it began, lasting just under 2 years. Evidently, her new husband had the same zero-tolerance policy for cheating that I did. With both of them now employed at the same hospital, tensions inevitably escalated. The administration, tired of the friction, decided it wasn't worth the trouble. Between internal politics and a wave of cost-cutting, it was Margot Beth who got the axe. She later took a job at Centura Hospital in Overton, where, no surprise, she became romantically involved with yet another doctor. Will this one stick? Only time will tell. As for Martin, after Alyssa shut him out following their breakup, he packed up and vanished. No one's heard a peep from him since. Alyssa dated here and there afterward, but eventually she met someone who seemed to be in it for the long haul. From what I can see, they're doing just fine. Alyssa and I have stayed friendly, purely platonically, and surprisingly, she and Amber have grown into genuine friends. When I think back to that awful day I stepped into the barn and saw Margot Beth and Martin together, I never would have believed life would take such a positive turn. But somehow it did. Our story has come to an end. What do you think about this story? Share your thoughts in the comments, and if you enjoyed the way I tell stories, head over to my channel and check out my other videos. May the force be with you. See you soon, my friend.